We're going to get into a little bit of nutrition topics. So we'll break down your macronutrients. We'll explain what a calorie should look like and the differences between why we use calories to measure food, and give you some healthy sources of fat. So,
all right, looking forward to it.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Mish Men podcast. I am your guest host for today, Mr. Caleb Whitney, and I'm joined here by the very honorable Adam Mauser.
How do you do? Honorable.
Honorable. I was trying to think of something quick, and honorable popped into my mind at the last minute, so I was like, that makes sense. It describes you well.
It's better than dishonorable.
That's right. Yes, I would say that honorable is a little bit better.
Yeah.
But today, Adam has given me the reins as far as being able to come up with a topic and everything like that. And something that, if you don't know my background or anything like that one of my passions is simply nutrition. And the overall, I know nutrition is a broad spectrum of different topics that you can dive deep into. But today I hope to just kind of give some general advice or general knowledge in general about different misleading nutrition things that are out there, but then also give you some knowledge on what you could do with your nutrition on a daily basis, and that can be some small, simple fixes to provide big, long-lasting results for yourself as far as longevity in life and just health and wellness in general and stuff. So.
Let's do it.
But I usually like to start off with, since you are my co-host today, whenever I'm talking about nutrition, I usually like to kind of get a background on what someone else's nutritional background knowledge per se is. And so Adam, if you don't mind me asking, have you followed any kind of like diets or fad diets or typical diets or anything like that in the past?
Yeah, I've tried a couple of like fad diets. Not too long, and didn't invest too much into it. I can't name one off the top of my head, but Jennifer and I would typically like, hey, we should probably improve our nutrition, and so we would do something for a while. What stuck the most over the past several years, I'd say the past 10 years, is focusing more on the content of the calories, if you will. Like calories, not all calories are the same. You could have, 1,000 calorie intake, but it's just trash, or 1,000 calorie intake of high protein, some carbohydrates, to feed the body, because that's what you're doing. You're replacing nutrients. And so I've kind of focused on that. Now that's the ideal. Now, whether or not I meet that ideal, we won't discuss that, but I think the results speak for themselves.
Oh, they show all right. No, that's very well put. That is, I love the statement that not every calorie is the same or is valued the same. So an example I give people that I work with on nutrition basis and stuff like that here at the gym is, an example is if you go to McDonald's today and you buy a Big Mac meal, on average, it's going to be about 550 calories. And now another example is you could, instead of going to get that Big Mac meal, you could make 3 Tupperware containers full of rice, chicken, and maybe a certain low-calorie sauce or something like that to give it some flavor. Also green beans. And those 3 containers can be full. And those containers typically, now I'm ballparking here, but can add up to about 525 to 550 calories, depending on the sauce that you choose, how much of it you use, and obviously quantities of each individual rice, chicken, green bean that you use and everything like that. Now, when I give you those 2 examples, when I give those examples to different people, that opens their mind as far as like, well, I do not eat a lot, and I eat Starbucks and a latte. And then I'm like, well, you could be having this, and this instead of eating that Starbucks and latte, and you'd be eating a lot for the same amount of calories that you're eating at that Starbucks and everything
Right.
like that. So,
And no sugar, well, reduced amount of sugars.
correct. Yes.
Significantly.
And the term that we use for those calories that mean more are they're nutrient dense foods. Yeah. So you're getting a lot more or a lot greater value per calorie for that food than you would if you're eating what we would call like empty calories.
Let me ask you a question real quick.
Yeah.
So, me personally, I don't care for the metric calorie. Is it a useless metric, or is it like not as useful as what society tells us it is?
It is useful in the state that it is a good measurement of what you as an individual are burning. So when we talk about calories, I always utilize calories to calculate what we call your metabolic rate. So for example, if you're an individual that doesn't work out at all, you work from home, you don't even get out of bed. You still just
sounds great.
You have a laptop, you're at home, you have the setup, right? Just waking up and functioning, you're burning through calories.
Right.
And it's called your metabolic rate. And the way we measure those is in calories. That's how it's been measured. And the reason that we measure food in calories is for that reason. So if I were to tell you, hey, I'm going to calculate your metabolic rate for you. And the thought process is, if you eat that metabolic rate in calories, then you will not fluctuate in weight. You'll keep same weight as far as not going up and down. Now, obviously, other stimuluses come in where you add in maybe a training protocol where you work out on a regular basis. Well, what that does is it increases how many calories you're expending. So then we need to increase the amount of calories that you're taking in if you want to maintain your weight. Now what most people are interested in is losing weight or dropping a few pounds here and there, or whatever you want to call it. It's very simple. You eat a lesser amount of calories than you expend. And I can get a little bit more in detailed on that because that's not always the easiest, simple answer.
Right.
But for right now, that is the most simplistic answer that you can possibly hear.
Or it's close enough, right?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Because you could have, a lot of refined carbs, a lot of calories. You won't feel sated. You won't feel satisfied from eating that because you digest them so quick. And then you burn off some of those, as opposed to if I eat a protein heavy meal with some carbohydrates, nutrient dense. I'll go back to the question I asked and why I asked it. If I were to focus on eating nutrient dense food and just ignore the calories, and I kind of monitor my body and I train my body to where I'm only going to eat when I'm hungry, do I even need to worry about the calories, or is that something I should probably do if I want to really do a good job at it?
That's a great question. So you're kind of hitting the point right up. So you can go off of just the way your body feels, right? And sometimes I suggest that to my nutrient clients and stuff like that, nutrition clients. But like you mentioned, if you're eating and you have a good feel for like what your body's feeling, if you know that you're doing, let's say, a really strenuous workout, and afterwards you're hungry, obviously your body's asking for food. It's asking for not just food, but energy, but then also the ability to replenish the muscles that you used in that workout, to give you energy for the remainder of the day, all these different things. So you can absolutely kind of go off not having a coach such as myself, right? You don't need me to tell you how much you should be eating.
You really help, though.
I do help in certain aspects. I'm not trying to downplay my role in it, but honestly, I can only help give you the knowledge. You as the individual, not talking to you specifically,
right?
But you as the individual needs to follow through on that knowledge and be able to hold yourself accountable to eating the appropriate amount of foods once you figure out what that appropriate amount is.
Right. I didn't mean to take us off topic, but I
No.
just thought I'd ask those questions.
No, those are great. And then the other aspect to answer your question is, I think there's a role of both, right? So if you're not, if you're like myself, for example, or yourself, and you're not like super worried about doing like a bodybuilding competition or performing your peak best at a competition of some sort, you're just trying to feel good throughout the day, and that type of stuff. Enjoy your day. Then yes, you can absolutely go off of the way your body's feeling and everything like that. The one thing I will say is sometimes when you're distracted doing other things, your work, life, whatever it might be, you tend to, your last thought is, oh, I should stop and eat. You don't feel that hunger until sometimes it's too late. If you're feeling hungry, then a lot of the times, then it's a little bit too late and you're probably not going to eat. You're either going to overeat and eat too much at that one time, or you're not going to eat enough and you're going to be not sufficiently full or replenished for the long period of time following whatever that time might have been and stuff. But yes.
Or like in a bad situation, I'm at work, I'm like, all of a sudden, I should eat something. And then somebody has, like, there's a candy bowl. And it's a panic eat. You're like, oh, yeah, well, that's just one won't hurt.
Yeah. And then one becomes 5, and then 5 becomes
fun size.
That's right. But yes, those are great questions. And so the way I'd like to approach this is I do not want to dive into what I would call the nitty gritty of nutrition. I think in general, trying to give people just general knowledge about it is the biggest thing that will help them the most. If we talk about the cells and how they break down in the body and all these different things, I think it'll get lost. And I think the biggest thing that people need to understand is that when Adam was talking about calories and that type of stuff, calories are, whenever you eat your meal, it's made up of 3 primary portions. And those 3 primary portions are what we call macronutrients. And I'm sure a lot of you, including Adam, has probably heard that term before.
I heard it, but I still don't understand it.
So macronutrients are, if you look at a nutrition label, they're the 3 things in bold. They are your carbohydrates, your proteins, and your fats.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a very complex thought.
Okay, I thought it was more complicated than that.
It is not complicated at all, right?
Okay, so I guess I do understand it.
Now, when we're talking about those 3 macronutrients, you should eat a certain amount of each of them to relatively maintain a healthy lifestyle. You need all 3 to have healthy functions in your body, feel full, feel replenished, and that type of stuff. And I speak with this as every individual is exactly what they are. They're an individual. So maybe the same amount of food or the same amount of breakdown that I eat for myself would not be the same breakdown that you would eat for yourself and what makes you feel the best. Maybe having a little bit more protein compared to having carbs is what best for you, right?
Well, how much does age play in that, or were you going to get to that? I'm kind of curious.
Age plays a small role into it as far as developing your metabolic rate. And then as you actually continue to grow, or as you actually continue to age, a big thing that I focus on with a lot of my nutrition clients is the emphasis of making sure you're eating the adequate amount of protein in your diet becomes exponentially larger. When you're younger, you can get away with things that you probably should have never gotten away with. Yeah. And just purely based on you're still young and you're developed and
your metabolism's high.
Yeah, your metabolism's high. You're able to get away with a lot of things. Whenever you get to a little bit of an older state, you absolutely need to make sure that you're having, the biggest thing I can recommend is having enough protein.
Yeah.
Before any of the other macronutrients. And when I say that, in general, men should be eating, and I'm going to say this in grams. I apologize for my pound people.
That's the parlance, right?
But that's the way we describe them as grams. But men should be eating at least 160 grams of protein on a daily basis. If they're eating less than that, then typically they might have some small issues, whether it be physical, whether it be mental. They're not able to have as much focus at work, whatever it might be. But at least 160 is like what we strive for as the bare minimum.
Is that like 160 grams typically? I know it's not like how does that relate to the size of your hand? So like a fist size, or is it palm size?
So at your meals, that's a great question. At your meals, typically 160 grams is the size of your palm.
Okay.
So not at one meal. Obviously, if you have, that's based on 4 meals a day or 4 meals throughout your day. And the amount of protein serving size that you have in that meal is about the size of your palm. Mm-hmm. So if you're, as an example, you're at a steakhouse, you order a steak. That steak should be at least, in rule of thumb, about the size of your palm of your hand. And then women should be having at least 120 grams of protein throughout their day. Now, some should have more, some should at least, but everyone should be having at least 120 grams of protein. So if I can't tell you how important protein is to your nutrition, to your general body function in general, as far as not just muscle recovery. So I think it comes from a younger state where we think, or different state where, they're drinking all these protein shakes and eating only carnivore diet and that type of stuff. That's all good and well. But it's not only going to the buildup of your muscles. It's not only going to replenishing your muscles. It's going to general body functions. It's going to your brain. It's allowing your brain to have more focus throughout the day in general, whether you're at work or at home, and everything like that. And then the other things that get played around with a little bit more is your fats and your carbohydrates. So depending on I typically go off of their workout regimen, or their activity level, whether it's working out or if their job is active, like a nurse, for example, has a very active job where they're on their feet majority of their shift. They're moving around patient to patient all the time. They are going to run more so off of carbohydrates than fats, a little bit more efficiently. Your body's preferred source of energy is carbohydrates. So with that being said, I know I said protein is very important. Carbohydrates are probably the next important thing that you intake. And the reason that is because that is your body's preferred source. Now, one thing that people are going to holler about is, I'm doing keto. And there's nothing wrong with keto. But if you're an active person, keto might be one of the worst nutritional diets that you can be on. Because the point of keto is to be in a state of ketosis.
Right.
And I won't get into the way you find out if you're in a state of ketosis is having a urine test, and you test your urine and you see that you're in a state of ketosis. And in a state of ketosis, you can have 0 carbohydrates. That includes your Starbucks, the creamer in your coffee, all these different things. And we, in general, kind of, I'm doing keto and stuff like that. You're not actually doing keto. You're not giving your body enough fuel to run off of. So whenever you go do your CrossFit class, for example, and you don't feel great during it, or you feel even worse afterwards, it's because your body's saying, hey, I don't want to run on fat. I want to run on carbohydrates. So, but I'll step off of my soapbox for a second. And
let me ask you a question to bring it back to carbohydrates, maybe. So I remember from a long time ago, high school health, there's complex carbohydrates and there's simple carbohydrates. So can you talk about that, like the importance of each of them? Or
yes, yeah, they both play a major factor. Obviously, they play different. So not to get too complex into it, but you have what we call micro. So we're talking about macronutrients, which are your 3 that we've already talked about. But then there's micronutrients that are basically, for lack of better, not trying to get into detail, are your vitamins and minerals that make up of a lot of these carbohydrates that you're taking, and some fats and proteins and everything like that. So the more micronutrients that are in a carbohydrate, the more complex it'll be. And when I talk about that, it means that the complexity means that it's going to take a longer time to be digested in your body. Mm-hmm. So when you take in, I'm going to use the example of a sweet potato. Mm-hmm. It's a very well micronutrient dense food. Mm-hmm. So it's giving you, when we talk about that calories, it's doing little amount of calories with a lot of effect on your ability to, or giving you a lot of energy and giving you a lot of micronutrients in that calorie. That is going to be digested, depending on what it is. A sweet potato is probably going to be digested in about a 3-hour window throughout your body. So they take longer to be digested. So it's not the Michael Scott done 5K race for rabies, that type of stuff, where he's eating the Alfredo.
That was hilarious.
Minutes before his 5K. Carb load. It is not what we think it is, right? It is, you're digesting it over the course of depending on the carb, the course of a 2 to 4 hour period. Uh-huh. And then at the end of that 2 to 4 hour period, that is whenever you're reaping the benefits as far as energy wise from that. And then with a complex carb, it is going to give you a more of a longer lasting energy source throughout that time. So it takes longer to be digested, but end result will last longer for a energy source throughout your day. The complex carbs are the things that should be making up your overall diet.
That's your carb macro should be made up of the complex.
Correct. Majority of it. Correct.
Right.
Yes.
Because the simples are like, like sugars and.
Yes. The simple. So a natural source, I always use an example of a natural source of a simple carb is like fruits. Uh-huh. Right. So fruits are typically high in sugar, natural sugars. Now, unnatural sources, you can have like a juice box, a soda,
a Snickers,
a Snickers.
Not going anywhere for a while.
I'm feeling hungry.
What about honey?
Honey is a natural, simple carbohydrate as well. And what those are, so they're also full of micronutrients as well. Right. If you're getting the proper source, so fruits and honey and those type of aspects, but they're going to be digested a lot quicker. So they get digested very quickly, not very quick. So comparatively speaking to a complex carb, they're being digested much quicker in about typically between a 30 minute window to an hour. Mm-hmm. And then with that, they do the exact same thing as far as give you, like, you've heard of a sugar high with your children, I'm sure, or even yourself.
I've experienced it.
Yes. So that's what we talk about as sugar high, right? So you have that burst of energy and everything's going crazy and you have all this energy yourself and that type of stuff if you took it, and then after that you have your sugar crash, right? And
the hypoglycemic shock,
correct,
that you've gone into.
Exactly right. So it plummets back down. Your glucose that you just digested, all that sugar has expelled, and you've used it all up, and now you're kind of running on empty, and you're sleeping on the table, and you have to pick your kid up and take them.
Unless you ate a tomato beforehand and a steak before that, and then now you can ease back up.
Yes. Yes. That's tomato for a lot of people is a fruit. So a lot of people don't know that. I didn't realize that until I talked to a few of my nutrition clients who are like, tomato's a fruit? Are you sure it's not a vegetable? I'm like, it's a fruit.
You want to hear a funny analogy for wisdom?
Go ahead.
So knowledge is knowing that a tomato is a fruit. Wisdom is knowing that you don't put a tomato inside a fruit salad.
I like that. I'm gonna use that. I'm gonna use that. That's a. Have you had a fruit salad with tomato in it?
I have never. Oh. You know why? Because it was made by wise people.
That's fair. That's why I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus, but I've had a quote unquote, I don't know if it's a fruit salad or not, but it was grapes covered in mayonnaise. As the Thanksgiving tradition at one household, and I'm like, I mean, this isn't something I'm going to eat, but y'all have fun. Like,
I like mayonnaise, but not in fruit.
not, yeah. So, but yes, but carbohydrates, like I said, simple carbs get digested quicker. They give you quicker energy, but it also gets expelled or depleted quicker as well.
Right.
Complex carbs, longer energy, everything like that. So when we're talking about these carbohydrates and the fact of like, how much should I have of each, right? The majority of your diet should be complex carbohydrates. And then you should have simple carbs, especially if you're working out. You can have, I usually suggest to take the majority of your simple carbs like shortly before your workout. So let's say 45 minutes before you know you're going to go to a certain group class or you're going to go do your workout at this time. Eat that fruit, eat that juice box, whatever it might be, about 45 minutes before your workout. And then you'll notice that at the start of your workout, you have a little bit more energy than you typically do. And you have a little bit more focus on what you're doing as well. And then when you get past that first initial phase of energy, that's why you need to have a nice, well-rounded diet to follow it up with after that first few minutes of your workout. So that way the complex carbs can kind of take over from there and sustain you for the remainder of that workout.
Right.
Now, if you don't work out on a regular basis, it is important to make sure you're eating proper amount of fruits because they do have important micronutrients that we talked about before. And they're also typically just more filling than having some type of pastry or something of that nature that's processed sugar.
That sounds so good right now, though.
Yeah, I mean, I can't argue with that.
It's that addiction to sugar that we, that stuff is addictive.
Yes, there's been studies that show that we have the dopamine release of eating a sugar or eating something sweet like that is very similar to the release of whenever someone has some type of like addictive drug. And it is crazy to think about. And crazy thing about sugar is it's not worse on your body than drugs. So don't do drugs. But
stay in school, don't do drugs.
That's right. But the crazy thing about it is the sugar is very hard on individuals' joints, especially as you age.
Like inflammation?
Exactly. Yes.
Yeah.
So sugar will cause a huge increase in inflammation.
Yeah.
So like if you have, let's say knee problems, right? And you have trouble getting up and down the stairs, you'll notice that the moment that you cut processed sugars out, all of a sudden your knees start to feel a little bit better. I'm not saying they're going to completely heal and there's a miracle and that type of stuff, but you cut these small things out. Your body wasn't ever made to process these things. So you're going to have an increased inflammation into your knees, for example, after having 3 slices of birthday cake at someone's birthday. So yeah, that plays a factor into it. So
it just makes weak things worse, kind of.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that inflames an area that's already weak, and then it just,
it adds to the problem, adding fuel to the fire.
Yeah.
Instead of maybe going through a proper rehab protocol and cutting those things out and making it better, you're gonna fuel the fire and make it worse. That's going off of a rabbit hole. But yes, that's a big part of carbohydrates are a major factor in how what you should be eating in general. My rule of thumb is if you're sitting at, like you mentioned before, the hand. So the hand trick is a big thing that a lot of people know about. But if you don't, so protein's the size of your palm at your meal. Carbohydrates, whether it's like a rice, a potato, some vegetables, whatever it might be, they should typically be the size of like a cupped hand. Mm-hmm. And you should be eating, in general, more carbohydrates than you should be eating anything else. Now that's for the general person that's relatively active, whether you're going on walks, going to a gym and working out, whatever that might be. But you should be having more carbohydrates than anything else. Now, we as Americans, where we get it flipped, is we end up having more just because of our culture. We have a lot more fat than we have carbohydrates. And the reason that is because fat can be found in everything. It can be in Snickers bars. It can be it can be in all your carbohydrate sources. It can also be in all of your protein sources as well. So fat can be found in everything. You don't need this. 9 times out of 10, you do not need to seek out a fat source, a healthy fat, or you need to seek out a healthy fat source. You don't need to seek out a fat source to have in your diet. And the reason that is because, and this is the example I typically use. So the steak dinner that we talked about earlier, your main course, the protein, the steak in front of you. Your side dishes, baked potato and green beans, for example. Well, that baked potato probably has some cheese and sour cream on it, which are both high in fat. Not healthy fats, but they're high in fat. And then those green beans were probably cooked in a buttery mixture, which is also fat. And then your steak probably has a slab of butter on top of it, which is,
sounds delicious.
Yeah. Am I making your mouth water?
Yeah, I'm getting hungry.
And then the steak itself also has fat content in it as well. So all of those fats play a role. You don't need to order another side dish of lard to go with your fat that your dishes have already been cooked in and all that type of stuff. So my recommendation for people would be enjoy those meals at the steak dinners whenever you have them. But most of the time you should be focusing on what you're cooking at home.
Right.
What are you cooking your meals in? Is it virgin olive oil? Because that's preferred. Is it coconut oil? Because that's preferred. Or is it a thing of bacon grease that you have left over, because that's not healthy source of fat? Or is it butter? Because that's not a healthy source of fat most of the time. Or not most, all the time. So being conscious of what you're cooking your food in can actually play a large role in how you're intaking your fat. And what fat will do is play a number of roles in your body, but for us, mere mortals, what we're mostly interested in is whenever we go do our blood work with our doctor, if you're having healthy sources of fat, doctors always talk about, you need to lower and raise your good cholesterol and your bad cholesterol. Well, if you're having healthy sources of fat, the healthy sources actually help switch those two as far as lower your bad cholesterol and help raise your good cholesterol. And then the unhealthy sources of fat are doing the exact opposite, where they're raising your bad cholesterol and lowering your good one. And then healthy sources of fat, I keep saying this, but what are they? Everyone talks about avocados, right? That's obviously a great healthy source. Coconut oil whenever you're cooking your food, olive oil when you're cooking your food. But in general, whenever you're looking at a nutrition label, unsaturated fats are typically your best option whenever you're looking at a nutrition label. Now, if you're looking at a nutrition label and it has some unsaturated fats, but it has greater amount of saturated fats and trans fats, then that is not a great option whenever you're looking at whether you're buying a supplement, whether you're buying a bag of chips, whatever it might be off the shelf. Those higher in saturated and trans fats are going to help what we just talked about, increase your bad cholesterol and lower your good cholesterol and everything like that, especially if you're having them on a regular basis, everything like that. But that's a small breakdown. I hope it wasn't too complex.
Yeah, it was good.
Do you have any questions as far as when it comes to nutrition or anything like that, or outside of nutrition in general?
No. So not a question so much, but coconut oil. Jen and I got turned on to that years ago, and we were part of a co-op. We might need to join that back up again because we had a fair amount of we have these 5-gallon buckets. We're down to 1 bucket left of solid coconut oil that we use for cooking, and we load up a smaller bucket so we don't have to cart that giant. Literally a 5-gallon bucket of solid coconut oil.
It doesn't go bad, so
no, and it stuff's good for you. There's so many other health benefits besides just cooking with it. Yeah. No need to go into it here, but it's good for your skin, it's good for your hair, good for your teeth.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, that's good stuff. Coconut oil.
Coconut oil. Yeah. So if you can only take away one thing from today's topic, go get yourself some coconut oil.
Yeah, a 5-gallon bucket.
Yeah, large quantities preferred.
Yeah.
So, well, Adam, I really appreciate you letting me kind of talk a lot.
No, it was enjoyable. Hopefully I'm sure the listener got a lot out of that.
Yeah,
it's good stuff.
I hope so. Obviously, please like and subscribe Mish Mash Men podcast. If you're watching on YouTube, make sure to subscribe and like the video, leave comments.
Yes. We like the feedback. Feedback is a gift.
Yes.
Feedback is a gift. So it's enjoyable to read that feedback. If you've got questions, comments, or even a snide remark or two, we've gotten some of those. And Rumble. Don't forget, we're now new to Rumble. So
yes, new to Rumble. So check us out on Rumble as well. And then next time that you check in here with Mish Mash Men, hopefully you have the dynamic duo back in house.
That's right.
And you don't have to listen to me anymore. So
no, I'm glad you're able to guest host the past 2 weeks. It seems like we just met last week too. I mean, time flies.
I mean, when you're having fun.
That's right. So, but no, I appreciate you standing in and I appreciate the topic today. So thanks.
Absolutely. We'll see you next time.
Yeah. See you next time.